Alright guys, so today we're looking at the life-changing journey of being selected as a Gurkha. Don't know a great deal about Gurkhas. I know they're pretty fit and pretty professional soldiers from Nepal. So there, without speculating, let's have a look. Alrighty, so let's start this video off. It does go for a little bit long. If it goes for too long, I'll do it in two parts. Otherwise, yeah, let's see how it goes.
This is Gurkha class of 2019. "400 trainee soldiers,
Make
the
myself
biggest
a little
intake
bit
to
bigger.
set foot in the UK in over 30 years. Most are just teenagers, and their journey began thousands.
So the first thing that reminded me of my own military experience was rocking up to basic training and just being bombarded with this whole new world and way of living. I can only imagine how different it would be coming from Nepal to Britain. But yeah, let's continue on.
Of miles from here. Nepal. It's a small nation wedged between India and China, the mighty Himalayas running down its spine. It remains one of the world's poorest and least developed countries, and for 200 years the British Army have recruited some of its strongest young men with the blessing of the Nepalese. Every year 10,000 apply to join, pledging to fight and potentially die for a country.
That's a huge amount of people wanting to apply for the British Army Gurkhas. 10,000. Be interested to see how many people actually get in.
And a queen on the other side of the world. It's a friendship like no other, a British Foreign Legion over 200 years old. With the UK's crisis in recruitment,
So it is a
we need
foreign
them more
legion.
than ever. But how do you find the very best Gurkhas? How do the British Army protect them from the corruption so rife in Nepal? And once in, is it all they dreamed of?
Gurkha!
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I've worked with some other nations, Papua New Guinea and stuff like that. I'd say the Gurkhas are probably a little bit higher trained than them. But I will say that a lot of these nations joining the military is a way of income. So that would be a pretty big reason to join. I'd have a guess, being poor Nepalese, join the Gurkhas and make some money. Be a bit of a, yeah.
Company!
Eastern Nepal,
The
Dharain.
first stage of selection for the British Army takes place each year in September. One in the west of Nepal in Pokhara, and one in the east, here in hot, sticky Dharan.
That's cool.
Young men from all around get up in the early hours and travel miles to be here for a chance of a job in the British Army.
Today we got one hilly district, that's Doco, and we got 5 Tarai districts. Normally they're farming background, especially in Tarai district, they're farming backgrounds, and hilly district also farming background. But nowadays most of the boys from the hills do come down to the cities, near the cities, for a better education, better life, or really better.
I think soldiers from farming backgrounds in general tend to be a little bit tougher. I don't know if it's the same over in places like this, but yeah, notice that a few of the guys I served with from the bush and tended to be a little bit more bush smart.
Better facilities as well. Yeah.
This year, the recruiting campaign was bigger than ever before. They advertised on every one of Nepal's 72 radio stations, and the recruiting officers, retired Gurkhas known as Gulawallas, travelled to all corners of the country, gathering
Gulawallas.
young men together on football pitches, tennis courts and cafes. They modernised their website. Potential recruits, known as PRs, could even email Deputy Head of Recruiting Major Sandy Nightingale personally, and they did.
I do get quite a few emails from PRs asking some quite various questions, from "Are my teeth okay?" with photographic evidence to can women join this year? What we're trying to do is dispel the myth that only certain Nepalis can join the British Army. It's still amazing to me that people think it's only certain castes. People think that you have to be rich. People think all kinds of things that are all wrong. We will take anyone who's good enough.
Cool.
We make sure there's a British officer on every
Just going to pause it there and say that there is the kukri. It's their famous fighting knife, and they're obviously their symbol. Pretty cool that this guy knows Nepalese.
stand as well, just so no one could think, oh, I'm a Gurung, he's a Rai, maybe he's going to give me a worse mark.
There are 125 castes or ethnic groups throughout Nepal, and historically, Gurkhas came from just 4 of these groups. Over the years, the army has succeeded in reaching more diverse sectors of society, in part thanks to its dedicated team of Gulawallas who go out in tireless search of the best young men.
That's cool.
This year's newest and most baby Gulawalla, aged just 45, made a dramatic entrance, bringing in record numbers from the
45 and he's a
east.
baby.
Wow, I'm really enjoying my job. Because I want to do something for my countries, the British Army. Everybody knows.
This Gulawalla looks like a badass. That mustache, that battle stash.
The world, this is one of the best army in the world.
Due to the searing heat, the 800-metre run has become the first test of the day, and the locals have turned out to cheer the boys on. Or perhaps eye up the competition.
Stand by! I wonder what speed they have to do it in.
With the futures of so many potential recruits resting on the selection process, there is no room for human error.
Every single score that's written down gets checked by someone else. And I personally will check every single score of those who are selected. Then the Chief of Staff will check every single score of those who are selected.
I guess that's to stop the corruption. I suppose it'd be a pretty good-looking job for a lot of Nepalese young men. And as I said, the corruption in the country. I suppose having the British there just to maintain that order, stop any potential corruption, getting recruits in that shouldn't be. Yeah.
In order to understand fairness, you have to understand Nepali society generally.
Yeah.
Nepal is a country where people pay money to get just about everything. And therefore, for us to kind of display ourselves as being free, fair and transparent, we have to go to huge lengths to convince people that that's the case. We'll tell them not to pay money to anyone to get into the British Army.
Yeah, exactly.
The first exam is maths.
Similarly, in the exam hall, every
I'd fail.
question must be unique. By 3 p.m, the test paper will be in the local bazaar, being sold for a few rupees.
So it's a big
Writing
deal.
the papers is extremely difficult. We do keep them under strict lock and key, and then in order to generate those papers, to proofread those papers, to proofread them again and again, because if there are any dramas on the day, it is unfortunately a cohort of young boys who are going to suffer, and we do not want that to happen.
One focus of this year's campaign has been to filter out potential problems early to avoid wasting recruits' efforts, emotions and money. Major Nightingale has introduced a new test to regional selection. Hyperextending elbows, some call it noodle arm, is an immediate fail, so this is now checked early. Throughout the day, if the recruits fall short on anything, they head straight to the dreaded Chowtari and then home.
So it looks like pretty basic sort of selection, basic health, basic fitness. I suppose it probably more comes down to the training itself and their cultural background of why they're
These
so
boys
feared.
will give everything to try and get into the British Army. I'm not saying that a British soldier is not equally motivated to join the British Army, but the difference with these guys is their whole families put pressure on them to join the British Army. If they get into the British Army, their whole family's life will change forever. And that's the context that we're working with. 1456 Nishchal. Yes, sir. 1460 Prajwal. Yes, sir. 1468 Pradeep Kumar. Yes, sir. 1470.
For some of today's young men, the news is devastating.
1499 Sugam.
Yes, sir.
I can understand how devastating that would be. I mean, it's a pretty attractive job or career aspect for Nepalese men in general, but if you want to join the military and get told no, you can't, that would hurt. Yeah.
500 Sunil.
The recruiting staff are very protective of them. They won't allow anyone to speak to the potential recruits. Today is too important. The chosen few will be invited back to selection in January, where they'll compete for one of just a few hundred places. Only 4% of the 10,000 applicants.
And they must have a
make
tougher
it.
selection later. That looks like he had a... Sorry, I can't help myself. Looks like a Minimi or Maximi para version.
Gurkhas have been part of the British military for over 200 years, ever since the Anglo-Nepalese War, when the British were so impressed by the fighting skills of their enemy, they struck a deal to recruit them when the war was over. Since then, they've become one of the most feared units of the British forces and fought in every major conflict. The politest of soldiers, the most ferocious of fighters. Can today's recruits uphold a reputation centuries old?
I have to say, one thing I find cool about the British Army is they might have units that aren't necessarily special forces. I know there's like the Paras, the RAF regiment, Paras are special forces, the Gurkha regiment, but each sort of regiment or battalion sort of has its own history and its own specialities. Australia is quite new in that aspect, where we have our Royal Australian regiments, which goes back to Korea. But yeah, it's cool that each sort of unit has their own history and culture behind it.
South of the Himalayas
And of course,
and
the Royal
west of
Marines.
Kathmandu lies Pokhara, Nepal's second largest city.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've landed at Bombay Airport. Thank you for flying with Delhi Airlines. Namaste.
It's the gateway to the Annapurna mountain range, a favourite spot for trekkers. But it's also home to final selection for the British Gurkhas. It's here that the recruiting team must choose once and for all who will become the future Nepali warriors. They've already been selected as the best of the best from their regions. Now they must undergo even more rigorous tests, not least of which is the infamous Doco Race. The race involves running up a mountain in the Himalayan foothills with 25 kilos of sand in a basket strapped around the forehead.
It is our identity.
Yeah, before that guy says, I think he's going to say it's their cultural identity, but that's certainly a crazy selection. But I guess that goes back to their history and the way that they do things. Normally for other units it would be pack run or webbing run. Yeah, this is cool.
As a Gurkha and carry a Doco, like we got the British Elite Force, like the Para, they got their own specific training, like the commandos, they have got their own selection, and this is unique for the Gurkhas.
Yeah, that's cool.
The day before, the sand is meticulously weighed and the Doco baskets carefully laid out. Each recruit must prepare his own.
In case of raining, they are covering their blanket by plastic. In case of rain, they will be heavy.
Does anyone know, probably a really stupid question, does anybody know if they actually use these Dokas in military life? You think they would use a pack, but yeah.
Heavier than usual weight.
Probably a stupid question.
And why the blanket?
A blanket because this one is quite rough, so they may scratch their skin at their backside.
How hard is the Doco race?
It is very hard, very hard.
The Doco race was only introduced in 1989. Before
It's a
that,
bit like
most
a
of
pack
the young
with a
men grew
headband.
up in the mountains and did this daily. There was no need for a test. At 5:45 a.m, the potential recruits leave camp, gather their Doco baskets, and when enough light has risen,
hello, finishing point, this is start point, over.
the race begins.
I wonder how many kilometres.
Okay, group number 1. Blue, figure 34, stand by. Go!
I always find the worst part is starting.
As a nature of the event, because it is uphill from start to the end. So my tips for the boys is, do not give up. Keep going and never look up. If you look up, obviously, your weight pull you towards the ground and pull you back. So always bend down and keep, going up.
Yeah, so you probably wouldn't be used in military combat or training. Probably just a cultural thing, but yeah, having that headband there and not being able to look up and patrol yards. Yeah.
Run was quite dodgy because of the weather. It rained the whole night, and boys were wet this morning, and their Doco was wet. The terrain itself is
humid.
Uphill, the steps, and stones and boulders, and the puddles.
No time for water stops. The recruits must complete the course in 46 minutes. If they fail, they leave selection immediately.
How far is it? It's pretty quick though.
At the top, it's time for a well-earned breakfast and relief at last. The descent is less painful, the boys singing as they go. Selection is almost complete.
Always good
It
for
won't be
morale.
long now until they know what their future will hold. It's the night before results day for the potential recruits, or PRs, from the west of Nepal. And to ease the nerves, the recruiting staff have suggested they put on a show. Western Idol delights the judging panel. It's clear that West's got talent.
They've ever done breakdancing, but we used to do stuff like that, similar to keep the morale up when you were bored. Dance, sing.
The next morning, it's a different story. The young men must now say their goodbyes. If successful, they're unlikely to see their newfound friends again. Many will be heading home. In a few moments' time, they'll be invited into a room one by one and told their fate.
We see a massive spectrum of Nepali society. We have people from very, very poor backgrounds who are orphans. You see everything in that room, which is why we don't allow you guys to go in there. It means so much to them.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them might have gambled everything on this. And it's quite a raw environment, actually.
Yeah, hard for you emotionally.
Yeah, well, I think everyone really.
It would be pretty hard to say no to someone.
It's impossible not to.
The minutes tick by.
But I guess the amount of money that the UK government puts into the Gurkha regiments and stuff like that, it's pretty big, what's the word? Pretty big investment. I want to make sure they have the best, and all these guys looks like they'd make good soldiers, but yeah, unfortunately, numbers,
I painfully.
You got to make the numbers for
Gurkha
selection.
Company from Catterick survey from above. If the recruits are successful, they will bound up the stairs at 1,000,000 miles an hour before anyone can change their minds. There, they will become part of the British Army, and it's over to Gurkha Company to turn them into soldiers. Amongst the candidates is 20-year-old Madhav Karki. This is his fourth and final attempt, and his last chance to get in before he turns 21 and can no longer apply.
It's interesting.
Everyone is nervous. Outside the gate, the families wait, willing their sons not to appear through the railings. For those who've been unsuccessful, there is next year, if they are under 21 and can afford to make this journey again.
It sounds like they get four times to the selection and have to be under 21. But you can see the families there waiting. Like, it must mean a huge amount, not only to this individual but to the families themselves. I mean, it's a pretty big income. I assume they'd be on the similar wages to UK soldiers.
If not,
Which is a lot
life
for
will
Nepal.
have to be very different. As Madhav Karki appears through the door, It
Come on,
looks
buddy.
to be good news.
I'm feeling very excited, and I'm feeling like I'm in the moon. So it's my dream became true. So I'm feeling very happy. No one in my family, they are in the army. I'm the first guy in the British Army right now.
You must feel so proud.
Yeah, yes,
man.
You're in the British Army. How does it feel?
It's my happiest moment of my life.
Really?
Yes. It's my dream come true, ma'am.
Have you tried before?
Yes, ma'am. This is my second dream, ma'am.
And you remember what it felt like last year, so this must be so special.
Yes, I'm very happy, ma'am.
Hello, Dai.
The
Sorry,
first
in the
thing the
beginning.
boys are allowed to do is phone home.
We give.
I have to say one thing. The phone reminded me, but working with Tongan PNG soldiers, one thing I notice is when they ring home, they don't just speak to their mum, dad, or brother and sister. They speak to the whole village, and they send money back to the whole village. It seems similar with the Nepalese Gurkhas. I would say that the Gurkhas are probably a fair bit more trained than our Pacific Island soldiers, as good as they are. But yeah.
The boys 4 phone calls throughout the selection process. So after each stage, so after the medical, after the physical, after the education, and when they're selected, they get a phone call. And that's basically so their parents hear from them first, so no one else can sort of play games and say, oh, your son's nearly there, but I'll get him in if you give me some money.
Must
So
be
it's
a-
to prevent that kind of thing.
must be a
And of
really
course,
big,
it's nice that their parents hear them first. It's always
Must be a lot of
little bit
con
sad when
artists
the
out there
parents
to do
don't
with
pick
this.
up. And they're waiting agonisingly for their parents to answer the phone.
Hello, Mama.
I just called my father. He's just crying the other side of phone. They're so happy. I know.
Bayru, brave hone pacha, imandari hone pacha. Bujhnu?
With their new recruits assembled, Gurkha Company waste no time. The boys' own clothes will now be sent back to their families. They'll need a whole new wardrobe in the British Army.
They have to get all their kit and equipment, so it's like a big Christmas day. So as you can see on the table, they are the Christmas father, and then they are getting a bunch of bag.
A lot of gear.
We don't know who's gonna be selected, and we don't know the sizes. So now we'll take them to the room, and then if there's a big or small, we try to sort it out within the group.
So it's like a big swapping session.
Yes.
And inevitably all the big guys will end up with a small kit.
Yeah, it will happen. Yeah.
Next up, a trip to the barber.
Hey, what for me that was when shit become real. When I come back from getting our head shaves and looked in the mirror. Oh shit! Yep, this is really real now.
And the tailor.
You feel like you are a part of an army. Without wearing these suits, you know, no longer civilian.
What was the hardest part of selection for you?
For me, it was a 2400 meter running race, VFT, because since I'm a grown up all in the city, I haven't run that
Well,
much.
it sounds like that Doco, the basket race, was 2.4 kilometers, 46 minutes, which is pretty fast considering it was uphill.
So for me to pass only, it was very hard, but I have trained hard with my friend. Then I have succeeded and passed.
The new recruits are inoculated, fitted for their Virtus body armour, and measured for their civvy outfits known as the mufti. Camp quickly becomes awash with ironing boards and boot polish, and mirror space is very much at a premium.
Yep.
The recruits keep none of their old belongings. Everything is new.
The Gurkha tie. This is a special tie. You can't find. I don't think you can find it in.
We cannot buy it.
Markets or
We cannot buy it.
Yeah, it's a specially designed tie for Gurkhas.
And so it's used only on special occasions, I think.
How excited they are.
Soaps. We have our razor kits.
Usually the Mogurs don't really grow
Mongols
mustache.
people
Yeah,
do
Mongolians
not really
don't
have beard or mustache. Like, it's very.
None of you guys that didn't have any beards to shave either. They still had to put shaving cream on and use their finger to pretend. So, good luck, guys.
Here in our case, man.
The exciting I am because son is always better than father because of the time they improve. So this intake will be better than last intake straight away. Son is always better than father. My son will be better than me straight away.
पछाडि चाहिँ हात राख्दाखेरि चाहिँ तिम्रो चाहिँ मेक श्योर तिम्रो चाहिँ यो पाम चाहिँ क्रस गरेको हुनु पर्यो हुन्छ अनि यहाँनिर चाहिँ कुनै खालको चाहिँ स्लिट हुनु भएन
Looks like this is their basic training.
New challenges this week is drill lesson 1. In a few days' time, they must parade in front of dignitaries and their families, and everyone wants it to be perfect.
मेक श्योर फ्रन्ट र्याङ्क चाहिँ मेक श्योर के हो तिमीले चाहिँ 45 डिग्री एंगलमा चाहिँ हेरेको हुनु पर्यो बुझ्यो फेरि गोर्खा कम्पनी भन्छु त्यहाँबाट फेरि के हो पोजिसन अफ एटेन्सनमा आउने ओके गोर्खा कम्पनी
It's all about the legacy in our tradition. 15 years ago, I was like them, and then one of my section commander, his name is Captain Bhakta Sesson. I am his legacy, so he
Section commander is a captain.
How to survive, how to do the things in army. And I'm doing the same thing to these boys. So maybe after a few years later, so one of these boys will stand in front of this place, and then probably he will say the same. The legacy will go on and on. But they will always remember us, and we will also remember them.
The recruits have just a week to get to grips with the basics before they fly to the UK. There's a lot to learn, and they'll need their new comrades.
So this must be just their basic training before they get to the UK. The basic sort of soldiering barracks sort of stuff, so they continue on with their infantry training. I think they're primarily infantry.
Their numries to help them out every step of the way. Instructors from Gurkha Company in Yorkshire's Catterick Garrison await the arrival of their new recruits.
Oh yes, everyone is looking forward for this day.
They look like tough bastards.
Quite quiet, won't it?
It is, yeah, it is quite quiet when the boys are not in the camp around, and then we just feel lonely when the boys are not in.
Soon enough, they appear, safe into this foreign land, which
the
from
real
now on
test
will be
begins.
their home.
It's really unknown area when you come into the UK. When I recall my memories, it's exciting as well as a bit daunting as well. You don't know what's coming up. So a bit excited, and on the other hand, you're away from your families as well. So you've got lots of emotion in your mind going through.
It's been a long journey to get here. Years of training, months of tests, examinations and interviews. But this is only the beginning. They will fight for this country and this queen now. A job that will change their own future and the fortunes of their families. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you can subscribe to our channel or leave us a comment.
Yep, I'll leave that there for you to look up iForce's news there. Alright, so what did we learn from that video? I suppose we learned that becoming a Gurkha is actually quite lucrative, and there's a lot of, there seems to be a lot of con artists around to get families to pay money for their sons to join the regiment. Seems like they do most of their basic selection over there, and yeah, if anyone has any videos on the actual Gurkha rifleman training or their further training, let me know, or any other videos on their deployments and such, yeah, hit me up. Also, I'll share my Discord link below, and if you guys could hit the like and subscribe button, that'll help me out a great deal. Thanks, guys.